we're going to hear from BRICS nations who say we need a legitimate form of payment because we're not going to take the treasury bill. If you want to make a big deal about 100% tariff for rejecting treasuries in payment, then we're going to make a big deal about how we've been rejecting them and how we regard them as impaired, if not toxic.
Well, hello there, my friends. Chris Marcus here with you for Arcadia Economics. And tonight we have part two of this month's interview with Jim Willie, where he talks about the tariffs, trade wars, gold and silver, and a whole lot more. So let's take it over to the call with Dr. Jim Willie right now.
And then he comes out a couple of days ago to say he's going to slap 100% tariff on any BRIC nation that challenges the dollar's supremacy, the king dollar. Any nation that doesn't kiss its ring and take its toilet paper called the treasury bill for payment of a shipment of finished goods. I'm telling you, Chris, this is the first potential blunder. I mean blunder. We cannot force nations to take what I believe to be toxic paper. You can at least call it impaired. I don't care if it's AAA. U.S. Treasury bill, I don't care if it's AAA. It's impaired, and it's being rejected, and it's being sold on a massive scale. We cannot force foreign suppliers to take our Treasury bill as payment for finished goods. We cannot do that, and it's not legitimate, and Trump is going to be risking an embargo against the United States. Now, let me give a little preliminary on that. I was told, this is right about the beginning of this year of 2024. It was either December of last year or January, February this year. One of my colleagues, really sharp fellow, said, Jim, have you noticed that there are a lot of super tankers, oil super tankers at U.S. ports? It's like 20 different ports. 20 different tankers are filling up at several different ports. I said, no, what do you suppose is going on? And he said, hard asset credit. They're not accepting the treasury bill. So we're giving them shiploads, tanker loads full of crude oil for credits in trade payment. Chris, Trump might not have gotten that memo. This is going to get very weird very fast because foreign nations, starting with Russia and China, are going to say, we don't want your effing treasury bill. That's not a legitimate form of payment. And I got a lot more to say about treasury bills because I believe that the Ukraine war was launched because treasury bills were rejected at Long Beach, at the port facilities. And I heard that from someone who works at the Long Beach port facility. This is very hairy, very dicey, very messy. We're going to hear from BRICS nations who say we need a legitimate form of payment because we're not going to take the treasury bill. If you want to make a big deal about 100% tariff for rejecting treasuries in payment, then we're going to make a big deal about how we've been rejecting them and how we regard them as impaired, if not toxic. And then they're going to start talking about how different measures are going on behind the scenes where the treasury bond is enduring haircuts. There were $2 trillion worth of treasuries. This was a figure that I heard in September. For calendar year 2024, there were $2 trillion worth of treasuries that were dumped, sold, discarded, and had to be redeemed. And this is not some option for the Treasury Department. They're required. They're the issuer. They're required to redeem them. And Chris, I go out on a limb once in a while. I do it again. I mentioned this before. I think the Exchange Stabilization Fund has been tapped, and they're paying back foreign central banks who are dumping treasury bonds in large volume. Why have we not had a treasury bond crisis? Why have we not had a treasury bond shutdown in the market? Something big is going on. And I think it's uses of the Exchange Stabilization Fund.
Could I mix a quick question in there? Because obviously, well, you talked about the tariffs, and interesting because at the same time he's saying that, you have a large portion of the world that I think, whether you agree with them or not, that they feel they've been forced into this situation. If you tell Russia they can't use the dollar after they're kicked out of the SWIFT system, what are you expecting them to say? So there's that dynamic on one hand where they're already not thrilled with this system, and I do fully agree that you have countries like India and others that don't want to lose access to the West. So somewhat in between there, but we'll see how that dynamic plays out. Yet, as I think you were starting to touch on a little bit, also we have the idea that, okay, we're going to come in and cut spending. Yet, if there's not some sort of write down of the debt, it seems like on the surface of that, that's not going to go as cleanly as is being portrayed. And it's just a matter of, hey, if Elon picks the right buckets, then there we go, problem solved. And I'm curious what you
Not gonna,
see going on
not going to
there.
be easy. The initial stage is going to be Trump increases the bureaucracy and the federal job list. He increases it from the new Department of Government Efficiency. The DOGE is going to increase the number of federal employees. Increase. There are going to be obstacles everywhere you look. There are going to be civil service laws and regulations that are going to be cited. There are going to be death threats for reducing the federal budget for the military. What is it, 840? I just read it was 880. I thought for sure it was 840 billion. Well, that's more than $2 billion, $3 billion. No, more than $2 billion a day. And they failed an audit. Well, they fail every audit. What's new about failing an audit with the Pentagon? Oh my gosh. Chris, this is going to get very hairy very fast. Are they going to cut back on the budget for Medicare and Medicaid?
And Jim, quick question there. I saw recently that the Pentagon has never passed an audit. Was that correct?
Yes, never completed an audit. Yes, never. Not one, never. There have been about 20 or 30 that were started. I wrote an article about this about 4 or 5 years ago in the newsletter, maybe 6 years ago in the newsletter. There have been about 25 attempts at audits, and they've all been stalled and they've all been canceled. And they claim that it's too complicated because we got contractors here. We got what do you got? We got sales agents. We got the military contractors. We got long-term contracts. We got cost overruns. We got clearance violations, clearance issues regarding certain weapon systems. We got all these different things going on, and we can't comply. And now we have a good idea what they've been doing with the money from the $100 toilet seats and the $50 bolts. They've been building a space fleet. They've been building a fleet of spaceships with, what do you call it, anti-gravitational propulsion. I tell you, there's a lot going on behind the scenes that we don't talk about. There are going to be a lot of obstacles. Now, I don't know if you're aware, but DOGE is going to have a mission without legal authority. Now, I'm in favor of what they want to do. I want to see them rain holy hell and cut back and get rid of like 60% of the bureaucracy. You should look up how many employees are there in the Department of Energy? How many employees are there in the Social Security? How many employees are there in the State Department? How many employees are there in the Treasury Department? How many employees are there in the Interior Department? How many employees are there in the Agriculture Department? To do it for 5 departments to get a shock. You won't believe your eyes.
Jim,
Vivek,
maybe we need to get you someone, maybe people watching at home could recommend you for the Doge
I'm not
board with
interested
this
in that.
knowledge you can
I'm
share.
not interested in getting a bullet in the back of the neck. I'm not interested in any of that. What I'm pointing out is that Elon and Vivek don't have any legal authority. So Trump is going to have to go before the Congress and ask the Congress to give legal authority to Elon and Vivek to reduce the Congress. So the Congress members are going to have to vote on a bill that will allow the power given to Elon and Vivek to fire them. Unbelievable. Okay, this is going to get very complicated, very hairy, very fast.
There you go.
Chris, this is going to get weird. What Trump has said in response to that point is we may need to see the Supreme Court make a ruling on what the DOGE has in mind for their agenda that we regard as a mandate. And the Supreme Court is going to have to convene when maybe a few of their members are in Guantanamo. Okay, this is very complicated. Very complicated. Okay, I got to say something about the Supreme Court. I've got a thing for, I think her name is Letitia Jackson. I got a thing for her. And it's not anything like I'm attracted to her.
That's your favorite justice?
No, she's my least favorite justice that needs to be impeached. On two different occasions, including the Chevron deference case, she actually said, we cannot do, I'm on the dissenting side, and I'm writing the opinion on the dissenting side. And if we followed through with that ruling and executed on that ruling, it would be too disruptive to the nation and the economy. Is that a constitutional ruling, Letitia Jackson? Or is that a cabal whisper in your ear opinion? And I think it's the latter. She needs to go. She's not making rulings and opinions based on the Constitution, and that's her job. And, you know, I'm not a law school graduate, but when I saw the second time that moron, Letitia Jackson, on the Supreme Court said the same thing. It would be too disruptive if we did that. Oh, I know what she said that for. It was for the Virginia elimination from the voting rolls of non-citizens. She said it'd be too disruptive. Oh, really? Is that cabal whispering in your ear again? Letitia Jackson? Time to impeach her. Okay, this is going to get very hairy, very fast. Okay? My favorite appointment is Kash Patel at the FBI. He's got a quote. He said, the first day, what I'd like to do is shut down the FBI building and convert it into a deep state museum for corruption. Wow. Chris, I'll ask you a question. Are they going to move the federal offices out of Washington, D.C. and shut down the city because it's not part of the United States?
I'm guessing that's probably not going to happen.
I'm thinking that it's going to be a gradual process because Trump has already mentioned. I know this for a fact from clients who've, it's boots on the ground and it's a lot of research. There are offices being built right now, buildings, one after the other in Temple, Texas. And the Department of Treasury has some offices in Reno, Nevada. Treasury in Reno, Nevada, mining country. And that tells me that they might be making connections for a silver reserve stockpile. For the military, it means that they might be doing a gold liaison role for Reno regarding gold-backed dollar. Okay. Notice that no role has been assigned or selected or picked for Judy Shelton, the gold advocate. And I think she's going to have an advisory role. That's what I think is going to happen. I don't know if you noticed this, but there's a quote from Scott Bessent or Bessent. I don't know how the Treasury pick. There's a quote. He said, in my portfolio, my largest position is gold. Did you hear that?
Yep, yep. I'm trying to pull it up. I have it somewhere back here, but that did notice that one.
That's big. Now, if you're a Bitcoin or an XRP advocate, like I am, I like XRP a lot more than Bitcoin. I think Bitcoin is just a nice currency for underground movement. Keep it out of the, the fair. I call it the ferrymen who seek their percentage cut. What we're going to see is an end soon. I don't know how soon. I'll give you an example. I do a bank wire. Someone wires me $10,000, and that's happened a couple of times. Sometimes it's a family member, but okay, $10,000, and they charge $40 on one end and $40 on the other end. $80 to send 10,000. Okay, that's not a really big sum of money. That's 0.8%. It's not a big sum of money, but if they actually executed it with an XRP transaction, and Chris, I'm hearing that they are doing that now. The banks are using XRP to save money because it's about 100 times faster and it's about 100 times cheaper, which means it's 10,000 times more efficient. Now, I mentioned $80 total fee to move $10,000 in a bank wire. And they say that it's Swift. And you might even put that on a little form. What's the Swift code on that? But some banks are not using Swift. And their costs are not $80. It's 80 cents. It's 100 times smaller. So we might possibly see a couple banks move forward and say, hey, look, if you have a $10,000 transfer, we'll only charge you $2. And people will start to think, or like $5, whatever, but not $80. And people will start thinking, wait a minute, how long have they been charging me $80? Okay, the banks are making money on transfers. XRP is up fivefold now in 1 month. And the reasoning that I hear is they're forging partnerships. They're getting potential backers and adopters all across the board, including Japan, their entire nation, Russia, their entire nation. But it's getting clarity from the regulators. Okay, Gensler, I think he's already resigned. Is that correct? Gensler at SEC, he resigned?
Yep.
Oh, look at that. It's up again. It was $2, under $2 on Saturday. Okay, I think we're going to see $5 XRP by Christmas. And people need to understand that every new month, you got to flip the calendar. So we're in the month of Christmas now. We're in the last month of the year. So when I say before the end of the year, we're going to see $5 potentially, I mean in the next 4 weeks. It's not like you got to wait till Monday morning for New York opening and live with the Friday close. This thing trades around the clock. I wake up in the morning, I check XRP to see what it did in Asia the day before. And there's no such thing as a weekday and a weekend. They're all days of the week now. Digital finance is going to change the world. What are they going to do with the bond brokers and the stock brokers? And that speaks to your past. What are they going to do with all them? They're going to have to find a real job. They're going to have to quit their options trading business and start a newsletter, start a website like the indefatigable Chris Marcus. Yeah, Chris, we're going to see a lot of industries turned upside down. The energy industry is going to get turned upside down. The finance and banking industry is going to get turned upside down. If peace ever breaks out, we're going to see the military contractors go independent. I asked a very interesting question to the Voice, who was German. We don't have contact no more. We had a big fight. He told me that I betrayed him, and I didn't. I think I caught him on a lie and he called it a betrayal. I asked him way back in 2010 or 11 or 12, whatever happened to the German military contractors who had dedicated sales to Nazi Germany and the military, both the Air Force, what they call it, the Luftwaffe, Air Force, and the Wehrmacht Army. And he said, Jim, they started an independent company. They called it the Odessa Group, and it operates today. And I said, is that what the future stores for the U.S. military contractors? And he said, I think so. But we have to see how it plays out. He said a number of different things like, we have to see an end to war. We have to see a president who doesn't operate like a puppet for the military to create forever. I said, to create forever war. And he said, yeah. I call it forever. No, I call it endless war. I call it endless war, but in the press you hear it called forever war. Okay, Chris, everything is going to get turned upside down. Oh, here's a neat little thing. I forgot to put this in my newsletter that was posted over the weekend. The Haitians in Ohio have left town. The geese are celebrating. Okay, this is really quite funny, but the Haitians are probably lowest on the total pole for civilized activity and behavior. But in terms of violence, it's hands down, it's the Tren de Aragua,
Although
the
Jim,
Venezuelan. Pardon me?
although Jim, since I know you are coming up on the amount of time
Yeah.
you have left, obviously wanted to get your thoughts on gold and silver
Yes.
and what you see playing out now as we enter a new regime. You talked about Judy Shelton, who has been talking a lot about gold. Just has her book out about gold. We have Scott Bessent mentioning gold. We have, I think it was Elon who actually invited Ron Paul into the Doge board, and that was after JD Vance said he was coming around to Elon's school of thinking, or coming around to Ron Paul's school of thinking. So, and at the same time, we have the debt standing out there. They're talking about trying to bring manufacturing back home. A lot of things that seem difficult
That's
to pull off without some sort of revaluation. Do you think we see that in the next Trump administration? And any other gold and silver thoughts, please?
we are going to see progress quickly, I think, in bringing industry back home. It's going to be progress, but it's not going to be production. Let me explain that. We've already had, oh gosh, I just heard of a name, and I can't come up with it. Some company said we're going to bring industry back, we'll bring our manufacturing back to the United States. I don't think it was Apple, but it was a big name. I'm sorry, I just can't remember the name. Too much information going through my brain stem in the last week or so. Trump had threatened Scheinbaum in Mexico and said, we're going to slap tariffs on all your products, primarily trucks and cars made by the big three U.S. automakers, Ford, Chrysler, GM. And what did Scheinbaum do? Well, in just an hour or two of conversation, she agreed to have the Mexican military interrupt the migrant flow, which I believe is stopped, but I got to see that to believe it, across the Texas border. Okay, we're going to see the labor unions in the United States, the United Auto Workers to begin with, celebrate because we're going to get news that certain shutdown plants are going to be reopened. And then you've got to go through the process of retooling. It might have been 4 years, it might have been 8 years since they were in production. They got to get all the different machinery working, and some of it is a little bit more advanced with robotics, like installing a panel, installing a windshield. Okay, a lot more is automated than before, and they had a lot automated before. Now it's even more. We're going to see progress in bringing back industry, but it's going to be contractual. It's going to be, well, we've got a deal where next year we're going to be updating and renovating our plant. And right now we're signing contracts. So Trump is going to have to make incentives like for corporate tax, and he's already talked about reducing corporate tax. Trump is going to have to make incentives like cooperating with the individual states and what do you call it, municipalities to reduce property taxes, to get a break. Get a break on taxes of all kinds, corporate tax and property tax, to bring industry back to the United States. I've mentioned this many times, but 1984, I brought in, I just asked a bunch of my colleagues. It was Jack, it was John, it was Bob, and the four of us decided in 1984, we got a disaster with this outsourcing. Chris, the disaster is now. The disaster is the Treasury bond debt. The debt disaster is the U.S. government debt that has been building up and accelerating because we don't have adequate industry in the United States. It's all just part of the same thing. It's federal debt and it's also trade debt. They work together, they grow together. They're very correlated. For gold and silver, I've got some really important points to make, Chris, and I'm going to do my best to cover a bunch of different things. There's something that I call the dollar honeymoon. Now, notice that right after the election victory, the dollar went up. So there were a lot of shorts on the dollar and they covered. And there were a lot of other people who just invested more in the dollar. And let me review several different points. And each one of them, I believe, does not have much merit. What I'm saying is the dollar went up and gold went down for factors that I don't believe have much merit. Let me go through a few of them. There's a viewpoint that the U.S. economy is going to endure reindustrialization. Well, that's going to take at least 2 years. And I just went through some of the process. You have to have contracts. You got to retool. You got to get plant industry. You have to get the laborers. You have to have the contracts with the union. Okay, that's slow. So the dollar going up now is premature for that point. The second point, the government debt is going to come under greater scrutiny and be better managed. Trump is not going to eliminate the debt. He's not even going to eliminate the deficit. It's going to get worse. So the dollar going up and gold going down on the basis of better debt management for the U.S. government, that's premature. The next one, there's a viewpoint that the U.S. Treasury bond market will attract more investors. No, they're going to have failure in auctions one after the other. Foreigners are going to continue to dump Treasury bonds. What are we going to do? Hold a gun to their heads and say you support the Treasury bond and support the Treasury bill for payment? Or we're going to bomb your asses? Is that what we're going to do? Is the basis of the U.S. dollar military foundation, military backbone? Okay, Treasury bond market is not going to get better. I'm sorry. So the dollar going up and the gold going down is premature. There's a viewpoint that price inflation is going to come under better control and going to come down. I don't think so. We're going to have an absence of foreigners bidding on the treasury bonds. So we're going to monetize our bonds, monetize our debt, and I expect we're going to have continued increases in our deficits. So for the dollar to go up and gold to go down on this basis is premature. There are two more. The trade deficit is going to come down significantly with more industrial production and exports. Well, that's the same thing as the first point. It's premature. We're not going to reindustrialize quickly. The last point, and I'm sure there are more. These are the major ones. I put this in my November newsletter. These are very important points. The U.S. sponsored forever war we brought to an end. Oh, really? Let's see if the Ukraine war gets transferred to the Middle East. Let's see if the military budget is not reduced by Trump. Let's see if we have another war hotspot like Taiwan. Okay, so the concept and viewpoint that the dollar goes up and gold goes down on less war is premature. Okay, I'm expecting we're going to get a renewed, powerful gold and silver rally before the end of the year. It's going to start, and it's going to continue into January and all through next year.
And
There's going
Jim,
to be a perception, Chris, that what Trump wants to do will take a long time. He will need time.
okay, and if I could just add in something to what you were mentioning about the dollar there. Interesting, if you take a look back, you can see here in, no. Here we are. Come on, mouse. In
Do a 1 year on the dollar. 1 year, not
Well,
one
I
week.
want to go just a little farther back to show you here in July of 2016, dollar below 95 was rallying into the election, and then by January of 2017 gets up over 103, and then by 2 years later in 2018 we're below 90. So again, we had this pattern last time: gold and silver selling off, hopes of a strong dollar. Remove a little more space dust, and there you were.
Yeah. Well, I made a prediction back in the early summer that if the Fed cut rates, we would see the long bond go up in yield. And we saw it. We saw it. In September, the rates were, oh gosh, it's hard to read the small font, but in September, the rates were about 3.65, 3.70, and it got as high as 4.4. I said it was going to be a contradiction of the Fed for a bad decision to cut rates. And they cut rates basically because they wanted to try to spur a bond rally. It didn't work. They cut rates basically to make lower the costs for borrowing on the U.S. government debt, and it didn't work. It was 117 days that the most recent 1 trillion was added to the federal debt. Okay, this is not going to sustain itself. The dollar rally is going to be halted, and it could be that the 100% tariff threat by Trump will produce the next round of dollar decline. And I have never said the dollar is going to crash. And I've been misquoted many times, and I've corrected it many times, and maybe even on your show. I have said that the dollar's purchasing power is going to go down. The dollar will fall versus gold. The dollar will be devalued versus gold, and now we're seeing it. Goldman Sachs came out with a $3,000 gold forecast. I'm not sure, but I think they said by end of year. If they said by end of year, that'd be one of the boldest statements that they've made, because we're
I think theirs
still
was
below
in 2025.
25. Okay, good. All right, good. Thank you. I've been reviewing the fundamentals for gold and silver, and the Chinese are not converting any of their trade surplus into treasuries. They're selling treasuries, and they're adding to their gold, and they're keeping it secret. And anyone who thinks that the central bank in China is the only repository of gold reserves, you got rocks in your head. They've got a fund called SAFE, SAFE, like safe, like a safe place to put. And that is not disclosed. I think they got a giant amount of gold in the SAFE, which is a state-administered fund. China has been continuing their purchase of silver, and so has India. There's still a lot of demand. Solar plants are not slowing down in their construction. What we've seen, pardon me, my nose is itching like crazy. When the Chinese signed up for for silver purchase, they are going around the market, and this has been big news now for the last 3 months. They're going to the South American nations. They're called the Andean nations because of the Andes mountain range. It's Ecuador, Chile. What else is down there? Ecuador, Chile, Peru. They're major producers of silver, and they're selling the silver to China in the form of concentrated ore. Now, in gold, they call it a doré bar if it's 90% gold and a lot of impurities like rock and other metals. I don't know what the word is for silver, for a 90% silver bar, but the Chinese are buying them, and they're buying them off market. So they're making it straight from the mining companies. And for those who think, oh my gosh, they're going to interfere with the silver market, well, they are. But you can't cheat the market. You can't cheat the market. They're going to make it so that the silver market runs out of supply. We're going to see China maybe using their off-market purchase of silver, resulting in the destruction of the COMEX silver market, reducing supply. I still think by end of year, we're going to see a run with silver, but you know, they're clamping down on it, Chris, and you're probably more aware of this than I am. But there's 17 ounces of silver, sorry, 17 billion ounces of silver short right now. So every dollar silver goes up is $17 billion of paper losses for the bullion banks. And the bullion
17
banks,
billion? I'm not
17,
I'm not sure about that
17
number.
billion, 17 billion.
I'm not sure that that's
Bank of,
correct, but
Bank of America is only 1 billion in that.
I'll pull it up in the background while you continue. I don't think it's quite
Okay,
17 billion.
I heard that figure from more than one source a couple of months ago. I included that in my October report. I included it in my November report. Bank of America is 1 billion short, and they're adding to their position short. The secret hand, the hidden hand in the silver market, keeping it suppressed, is Bank of America. You know, we all know the term doubling down. You got a bad bet and you double down because you're desperate. Well, they're quadrupling down. Okay, this is very scary what's going on. We're going to see a bullion bank die in the next couple of months for their silver position. I'm pretty sure about that. Okay.
Jim, just for note for you and people watching here, we see silver open interest 141,000 contracts at 5,000 ounces per contract, 706 million ounces, the total open interest. And then you can look at the percent short by here, 4 or less traders, 8 or less traders. But so it's not going to be 17 billion for each dollar it goes up. And there's a degree to which we don't know exactly what offsetting hedges they have. I don't think they are
Well,
necessarily
then
substantial, but
there's also over the
it's a large
counter, Chris.
figure.
It's a large figure, and over the counter is not included there. We've got the Japanese desperately unloading treasury bonds and euro bonds. Norinchukin, that's a hard one to pronounce quickly. Norinchukin Bank just posted a $5.8 billion loss, and they're seeking to unload $63 billion in one bank in treasury bonds and euro bonds. Okay, my colleague Euroraj, he's been associated with the newsletter now for 8 years. A nice bunch of contributions. He said G7 debt now is considered toxic. G7 sovereign bond debt securities are considered toxic. And now you're seeing Japan desperately trying to get rid of their treasury bonds and load up on gold so that they can make an announcement maybe sometime later this year. I don't know. It's going to be hard for them. The announcement will go like this: we've got more gold now than we do treasury bonds, so quit selling our yen currency. They're going to have to get to a tipping point of having more gold than treasury bonds to back their currency. This is going to get very dicey very fast. Chris, I tell you, these are scary times. Let me just say that the 30-year chart, the 25-year chart for gold still shows a gigantic long-term cup and handle or head and shoulder reversal pattern, and the target is a lot higher. Okay, what we had with gold is it went down, and this is an amazing point to quote. It went down to the 20-week moving average, the gold price. It did not break it. And its retracement, you know how Elliott Wave says that if you have a very powerful retracement, it tends to be 38%. It tends to be 3/8. Well, that's exactly what we got. It was 38 to 40%. It went from 2760 down to 2580, 180 point, and 38 to 40% decline. And now it's back up. So it has not declined that much because we're 2650 or something now. We're building a nice consolidation base for the next move up. You know, I find it kind of laughable, and I understand the emotional side to it, but we went from 1900 to 2700, and we never really had a big pullback. Well, now we have. So it's time to make the next leg up. And the story for silver is very similar. An uptrend, not a reversal pattern over many years, but an uptrend that's evident in the last year and a half, or maybe less than a year, 14 months. It stopped at the 20-week moving average. Silver halted at the 20-week moving average, right around 30 and a half. And we're stuck there right now. We're getting ready for the next move up. And, it's not going to be the Americans that do it. It's going to be China and India. I hated the name of Chindia that we used to hear 10 years ago, but China and India act very much in similar manner. What's coming is going to be exciting for silver. I believe the guy's name was Gary Savage, and he said, I believe 270 silver and 10,000 gold are very much in the making in the next few years. And we're running low on time, Chris, and I love being on your show. I think we're going to see some very difficult legislative and political haggling. And it's not going to be over, well, Mitch McConnell did that. No, it's going to be over a policy that is going to have enormous ramifications that are going to be difficult to manage. We're not going to be able to reduce the military significantly in their budget. We're not going to be able to reduce Medicare and Medicaid significantly in their budget. We're not going to be able to reduce the bureaucracy and the federal jobs quickly or easily. We're going to have some very big fights coming, and all the while in the background, Donald Trump and Robert Kennedy are going to have their lives threatened. I'd like to know what Robert Kennedy is doing to protect himself. I know what Trump is doing, and I don't talk about it. Because let's just say when he's standing next to a family member, the height ain't right. Donald Trump is 6'3". Keep that in mind. Keep that in mind at all times.
Noted, good sir. And perhaps just wrapping up, I would add that the best way to keep the important things like that in mind and stay updated is, of course, by going to the golden-jackass.com, home of the great Dr. Jim Willie himself, where people can get access to your newsletters. You got some videos on there now, too. And also the sponsor and consulting tab, which I know are hot sellers, especially what better gift for the children than a 1 hour call with Dr. Jim? Great for all ages.
Chris,
Have any college students been gifted a Jim Willie consultation yet to send them on their way to become the leaders of tomorrow?
I got to say something. I'm closing in on the end of 5 years of doing consult calls, and I've done close to 800 of them. This is really quite amazing. I've got one that I'm going to be doing tomorrow. I need to pick up. What I do is I take a pause when I have my hard work to get together the production of the newsletter. Um, Let me just make another comment regarding Judy Sheldon before I go.
Please.
She is recommending that Trump make the treasury bonds, the newer treasury bonds, gold redeemable. The new treasury bonds, gold redeemable. Now, that sounds like a good idea, and it has a lot of merit. If we reduce the monthly deficits, and if we don't, then foreign nations are going to buy our treasury bonds and a month later redeem them for gold and drain our treasury of gold. In other words, we're going to be a delayed seller of gold. There's no way out. I keep saying this to clients. We haven't fixed the deficit. We haven't fixed the BRICS. We haven't fixed the crisis that's coming for the entire, Ponzi scheme of an extra trillion every 3 months. We haven't fixed anything. We haven't reindustrialized. This can be a long, long way. And all that time, gold is going to rise, silver is going to rise with it. I'm still sticking with my $10,000 gold and my 300 minimum silver estimates forecast. I'm sticking with that multi-year, not next year, multi-year. We're going to get a lot of gold advocates at work. We're going to get a lot of different connections with gold for a standard. And the transition is going to be a nightmare, an absolute nightmare. And all that while, gold will go up. I don't think foreigners are going to toe the line and accept treasury bills. They're going to explain to Donald Trump, and we're going to give you a refreshing course on global finance. We've got multipolar solutions for trade payment. We've got multiple options. And if you want to fix your dollar, you can be one of them. If you make it gold backed, we'll buy it and we'll redeem them for gold. There's no easy fix to this. So sign up for the newsletter. It's my stock and trade. Sign up for a consult call. I'm available 3 weeks a month, rather, and what do I say? On many different hours, many different slots during the day. 3 weeks per month. Scott, we're making history. Not Scott. What's your name? Chris.
You thought I should be Treasury Secretary. You're confusing me with Scott Bessent.
Oh, Scott Bessent. Oh, let me make a comment about Scott Bessent. There's a lot of complaints that Bessent used to work with the Soros Foundation, the Soros Fund. He was working for the fund. I got that wrong. He was working for the fund. And this was, I think, the 1990s, early 90s. They made a killing shorting the British pound. Okay. This was Soros and his right-hand man with Bessent. And I have a theory. I have a belief, and I'm going to stick with it until I have it refuted with evidence. I think Scott Bessent worked for Soros without getting his hands dirty. I think Trump got himself a superstar at Treasury, and he made sure that Bessent did not have his hands dirty. He's not been involved in funding the invasion. That's the Soros Foundation. That's not the Soros Fund. In the 90s, I don't even know if there was a Soros Open Society Foundation. I don't know. But right now, it's a very big part of the invasion. So Scott Bessent might be a superstar, and he said his largest position is gold. Okay, this is very exciting. We have a complete changeover. We're looking for a smaller government. We're looking for a gold standard. We're looking for no more border invasion. We're looking for a lot of really good things. State rights. We haven't talked about state rights, but when Virginia won the Supreme Court ruling of state, what do you call it? State sovereignty, essentially, is what they quoted. State can do what they want. That was the 5th different instance of state rights being confirmed. Okay, It's very exciting times. You just have to survive. And me too. So,
Well, unfortunately, along those lines, we do have the golden-jackass.com, which is where you can get Jim's insight even before he comes on and shares it publicly. And again, Jim, I appreciate you being here. Everything you're looking at, and going to be an exciting couple of years, and hopefully at least being aware of some of the things going on can make that journey a little easier for people. So I thank you again, good sir. Always a pleasure to catch up with you. And I guess probably won't do this again before the end of the year, but I can only imagine what Dr. Willie has planned in 2025. I'm no doubt that it will be immense to very immense. That much is certain. And we'll look forward to catching up with you again soon, my friend.
well, thanks for having me on, and watch Texas. Texas is going to make some very serious waves. Gold and silver for currency, and maybe BRICS membership. This is very interesting. Watch Texas. All right, thanks for having me on.
All right, my friend.
Appreciate everything you do. Good luck
Talk
to you.
Soon. Well, thank you to Jim, and thank you to Silver Viper Minerals, who brought us tonight's show. And Silver Viper has been advancing their La Virginia Gold Silver project, which already has a maiden resource estimate of 49 million silver equivalent ounces. And in the time since then, their exploration has added more ounces. There are more ounces eligible with the higher gold and silver prices, and Silver Viper has been moving towards its next round of drilling, following which they are looking forward to publishing an updated resource. And to find out more about the status of those plans before that round of drilling takes place, we'll just click on the video with a recent update from Steve Cope of Silver Viper that's coming your way now.